Hello, and welcome to episode 39 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
And as always, we're reading Anthony Kenny's A New History of Western Philosophy, chapter by chapter. In this chapter, we are looking at aesthetics in the modern era of philosophy.
Isn't this the only chapter on aesthetics?
Yes,
in the
this
book?
is. And there's no chapter on aesthetics in any of the previous units.
Probably for good reason.
Yeah, well, I know you're not too big of a fan of this chapter. This chapter, aesthetics, is really all about beauty. So art and music and how that kind of, what the goal of that is and how it impacts our lives.
And how do you categorize it?
Yes.
How do you define it?
Exactly.
How do you define the morality of aesthetics?
Mm-hmm.
The
And starting
short
off,
answer is you don't. But go ahead.
well, Alexander Gottlieb Baumgarten tried to. He said that the point of art is to produce beauty, and that the ordered relationship of the parts of a whole is where you find beauty, and beauty gives pleasure and arouses desire, and the finest beauty is found in nature. So
Agreed. I agree with all of that.
Really?
Don't you agree with all that?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I would say so. This is really, the first sort of look at beauty, or at art, really, because there's really two ways that these people split it up into beauty and sublimity, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I definitely agree with this beauty section here.
Well, didn't Plato talk about beauty and, the forms and ideals and ideas? And
Probably.
stuff? Yes, I think he did. But I like how this guy puts it better.
Yes. It's very simple and straight to the point.
Yes.
And so then Hume goes on to say about that, I'm going to read this little section here. He says that beauty is such an order and constitution of parts as either by the primary constitution of our nature, by custom, or by caprice, is fitted to give a pleasure and satisfaction to the soul. This is the distinguishing character of beauty, and forms all the difference betwixt it and deformity, whose natural tendency is to produce uneasiness. Pleasure and pain, therefore, are not only necessary attendants of beauty and deformity, but constitute their very essence. So he kind of takes it a little bit farther here, saying that, beauty really impacts our soul. It's not just something that we look at, it's something that kind of gives us either pain or pleasure and kind of forms how we shape our life as well.
Have I mentioned that I cannot not think, is that right, of the movie What's Up, Doc, starring Barbara Streisand, every time the name Hume comes up?
I do not know what you're referring to.
Do you ever see the movie?
I did not.
It's one of the best chase scenes in all of...
I know, you've said that before.
You've not seen the movie?
Or I haven't seen the movie.
And maybe the best courtroom scene of all
Really?
movies. Anyway, there's a scene in there where there's the snotty bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
one of them is named Hugh.
Oh, Hugh.
And he says, he's being introduced to somebody in kind of a silly way. And he says, "I am Hugh." And the guy says, "You are me?" "No, you are you. I am Hugh." I don't know why he keeps saying that. It's a really funny scene. So that's why every time I think of hear Hume, I think of What's Up, Doc.
Do you know that the name Hugh is very, very hard for French people to say because all of the letters in it are silent, according to French pronunciation?
I imagine it'd be pretty easy to... maybe it would
It'd be very difficult. Yeah, that'd be about it. So after Hume...
That's all I had to say about Hume. And literally nothing to add of substance. All right, well, I know what we're going to do. We're running out of time to do anything. You're going off to college.
Yes, in 2 days. We're actually recording these episodes really soon here. We have 2 days to record 3 episodes of this podcast.
That made me very sad because I thought, this weekend we gotta watch that movie. Well, we can't because you'll be gone, you bastard. I'll be watching the movie by myself, crying Saturday night. Adam would like this movie. All right, Edmund Burke.
Yes. So Edmund Burke adds the sort of aspect of sublimity that I was talking about. He defines sublimity as it can also be the aim of art along with beauty, and sublimity is astonishment without fear. So, it's not necessarily something that looks pleasing. It doesn't exactly give us pleasure. It can just be something that sort of astonishes us. We're not afraid of it, but it gives us a sort of a deeper feeling than just beauty. Do you agree with that at all?
I agree that band had the best song that was inspired by riots in the history of all rock music.
What are you talking about?
Sublime.
Oh.
Didn't you know that band?
I've heard the name.
And I always forget the date It's 1992, but there's a song that is named after the date of the Rodney King riots.
Oh,
It's a great song.
interesting.
I have it on vinyl.
All right.
Yeah, I pretty much have nothing of value to say about any of these philosophers' descriptions of aesthetics, but I will try better as we go forward.
Well, that's fantastic. Moving on to Kant, who I know
Of
is
course,
your
we have
favorite.
to talk
Yes, let's
about Kant.
Yes. Kant says that judgment of taste is the basis of aesthetics. And he also says that beauty has really no practical point, but it is worthwhile to kind of study and to kind of look at and that sort of thing.
I don't know, why would he say that if it has nothing practical?
I mean, I guess he's kind of just
It's a
saying,
waste of time.
well, not everything has to have a practical point. He's not saying it's a waste of time. He's just saying, there's really no further goal than beauty itself. Beauty doesn't give us anything other than beauty.
Yes.
And he also says that judgments of beauty, ought to be universal. When we look at something and say, that is beautiful, we're really saying, I think that should be beautiful for anyone who looks at it. He's kind of saying, even though people won't agree with me, I think that this is beautiful universally.
Yes, which it kind of turns the definition of universality on its head, doesn't it? That
Yes.
you think it should be universal, but it's not universal.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's the point? Then you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's not universal.
I guess so.
And I disagree with him where, he believes that that you can't, like you just said, you can't bring anything of beauty into a concept or, overarching what do you call it? Category or whatever that is either true or false.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that. I think there's some things that are just beautiful. There's a lot of gray area, but there's some things that are just beautiful and some things that are ugly, and there's nothing you do about it.
Yes, I agree with you there.
Yes. Well, there got to be some sort of standards. Otherwise, the word beauty has no meaning.
Yeah.
I think ugly is beautiful. No, you don't.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's a purple-haired freak wears only black. Ugly is beautiful. Well, only because you are so ugly. That's why you think that. Because no one thinks you're beautiful.
All right.
Yes. All right. Now I'm turning into a cynic.
Yes, you are.
I'm getting angry cynicism.
Kant then goes on to
Kant
give...
makes me angry. I don't know why I get so aggravated.
Yeah, you get very up in arms about Kant.
And I don't really have a reason to.
No, not at all.
I just get frustrated with... It just seems like it's overly complicated. And it's just, I have to spend so much mental energy just to even understand what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
The summary of what he's trying to say out of Mr. Kenny. I just get fed up with it.
Yeah, that's fair. He then goes on to give some examples of sublimity, and he gives kind of the example of like a really rough ocean or a very big waterfall, rocks hanging overhead in the mountains and that sort of thing. That's sort of that astonishment without fear. There's that sense of danger almost. If I get too close to that thing, I will be in danger. But from a distance, all I get is this astonishment, this sense of risk, but also this very, higher than beauty sort of emotion.
Yeah. All right.
We then move on to Coleridge, who says that imagination is the special creative gift of the artist, and that when we're creating art, we're really reflecting God's eternal act of creation. That's the closest that we can get to really, reflecting God is when we're creating art.
Is he one of the romantics?
I believe so.
Or is he after the romantics? I'm not sure, but
I'm not entirely certain.
I like the description of how Kenny explains that the romantics start with the producer of the art or the beautiful work.
Yeah, he was a
as
romantic.
being the focus of it, an expression of the artist's own emotions, but Kant is more analyzing the subject itself as opposed to, how that it was an expression of some individual. Which you would think that he would be able to categorize it more,
with how much he
as a
categorizes
concept.
Everything else.
If you're dealing with the object as opposed to the artist, and they're dealing with the artist and what created it, and what it expresses, I guess.
I think there is some truth to that, in that, in creating art, there's something almost, I don't know, more than humanity, I guess. Because it's something that, depending on what medium you use, it's something that can last forever, really. It's kind of beyond you, and it's, again, it has really no practical purpose, but we're doing it just for the sake of beauty or just for the sake of art.
Right. I agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah, there's certain timelessness of it, and art can express a concept without language.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Mhm.
Yes.
Deep thoughts.
Yes. Now moving on to the aesthetics of Schopenhauer.
Who might be my least favorite philosopher of all time.
Really?
Do you think?
Yeah, he's not great. I don't.
Well,
really
you don't
him.
like Nietzsche.
I don't
Which
like
one's
Nietzsche.
your least favorite?
Probably Nietzsche. He
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah. It's
He's very he's more entertaining to read than Schopenhauer, but his philosophies I think are worse.
Yeah, it's like Bizarro World
Yes.
or something.
So Schopenhauer says that only when we view art separately from our own desires, separating ourselves from the desires of our will, are we really enjoying an aesthetic experience.
Yeah, disinterested contemplation.
Yes.
And I think that's the exact opposite of what you do when you
Yeah,
look at art.
I would
and
agree. He kind of, points to, images of naked people, these naked paintings, that's just attracting our
base nature.
our basis natures,
Yeah.
and to really understand the aesthetic purpose, we have to detach ourselves from that. And I don't think that's it at all. I think when we view art, it's emotion more than anything else. It's that sort of nature, that will.
Well, I guess his theory is that if you're emotionally involved in it, that it's the will, the overall will that's causing you to view it, and you can only overcome that will by disinterested observation through your intellect, and then you're doing it of your own free will.
Yeah.
Which I still don't understand how you can have. Whatever. That's a whole different chapter about Schopenhauer, about the great all-encompassing will.
Mm-hmm. He then goes on to say, kind of categorize these things. He says that beauty arises without effort. That's when we're looking at things without the will. We don't have to kind of try to separate ourselves from the will. He says sublimity arises with fear. So again, adding that element of fear into that. And he also adds this different category of the charming, and the charming is what attracts the immediate desires of the will and should be condemned totally as not really art at all.
Mm-hmm.
He also kind of goes on, this is kind of interesting, I think. I don't know how true it is, but he says that when artists are depicting humanity, they're really trying to create nature perfected. There's something different when we recreate, images of humanity. We're kind of saying to nature, this is how humanity should have been. We're creating the most beautiful depictions of humanity, really.
Yeah, I think that's a bunch of nonsense.
Really?
Yes.
Fair enough.
I mean, if you have a painting of, a battle scene, well, I guess some people would glorify, battle scenes, but, if you what's that painting of the, is it a philosopher who committed suicide in his bath? It's a famous painting where he's got.
Oh, Socrates?
Was it Socrates? I thought it was a stabbing.
I don't know. I just know the famous painting of Socrates, taking the cup.
No, this is a guy who's in a bath, and I think he slit his wrist or something.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, I can't think of what it is. But that's not, the ideal.
No.
So how does he doesn't seem, I don't know how that explains that. But he goes back to the Platonic idea.
Yeah, he says that art brings us closer to the ideals. That's how we really achieve this, higher than the will, really, is to get to art and then to the ideal.
And you can get to the ideal better than a historian or a scientist through art. Some
Yeah, I mean, if we're really believing in the ideals, of course, we have to say that first, because I know you do not like the idea of the ideas.
Well, I mean, I think there are some constants. So I kind of agree with a lot of that, but then as he applies it,
because it's like the image of the image of what's supposed to be, really, and it's kind of just very far removed from what the idea is what his whole philosophy is.
Yeah.
Moving on to Kierkegaard on music.
Kierkegaard.
So yes. Kierkegaard's aesthetic person is someone who pursues immediate pleasure. So what is just immediately attractive or desirable to them, that is what they pursue.
And he has like an ethical philosophy about aesthetics and beauty and art. It's good if it's ethical, if it's the right thing to portray.
Yeah.
Which I don't see that.
Yeah.
Because I think you have art. Well, I guess it depends on your intention, but I think. Well, like for instance, I don't think he does anymore, but like Jordan Peterson, I don't know if you haven't read any of his stuff.
I've seen videos of him.
Yeah. So interesting. I think a great modern day philosopher, certainly a social scientist, psychologist, and all that. But he used to collect. I assume he still has them. posters and artwork from the Soviet Union.
Really?
And he had them plastered all over the inside of his house, as like almost wallpaper. And it was those kind of old posters were really kind of dehumanizing,
Mm-hmm.
but they had a certain aesthetic.
Yeah.
And I think he said publicly about it is that he liked to have it as a reminder of bad things, I guess. But so some of the I think you can look at some of the artwork, like even communist artwork, where you'd say there's some sort of beauty to it, or a message to it, even though it's espousing a terrible ideology and repression and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't think that the ethics of the artwork or the person necessarily tells you the value of the artwork itself.
Yeah.
Do you think?
I would agree. He also goes on to say that music is most capable of expressing sheer sensuality because it is most abstract.
Yeah.
So that's what gives us, the most immediate kind of emotions. And he also kind of goes on to say that the development of music and discovery of sensuality are due to Christianity. Because it was, I kind of forget his whole reasoning behind that, but I think essentially what it was is that, Christians kind of differentiated between, the types of love that the Greeks had. And they kind of separated sensuality from true love. And so with that, music developed to kind of represent that sensuality, whereas everything else was kind of reserved to that sort of true love, I suppose.
Yeah, didn't you have a long discussion in here about Mozart?
Yes, this is his whole really sort of argument about music entirely was just about a single Mozart piece. Don Giovanni, I think one of his operas, maybe?
Yeah.
I do not know.
I think so. I'm not an expert on classical stuff. Oh, they don't like it.
Yes. I feel like I should know more about classical music because I've played a lot of it on
Yeah.
the piano, but I know next to nothing about classical music.
My knowledge foundation of classical music is from the Looney Tunes cartoons that were created in the 1940s and 50s.
Yes.
It's true. Wagner and all that.
I should get some Wagner on vinyl. Wagner's very good.
I don't know. I kind of don't like calling him Wagner because it's really Wagner.
Well, he's German.
I know, but still, it's spelled with a W.
Fair enough.
So, but I do say Wagner.
So Kierkegaard also says that matter and form are essential to art. So what he kind of says here, it's not just so much that you have a message behind the art. It also has to be, pleasing. It has to be good artwork as well. You can't just say, well, this is just means something big and grand and has a good message to it. And, well, it has to be good art too, along with that, for it to be, the best art you can make.
I wonder if he would be a fan of Hunter Biden's paintings that he was trying to sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
It's true art. I think he has perfected graft into an art form, and it's sublime. I do. I think it's just fascinating how much corruption is in that family.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a thing of beauty in some way. It's
sublime.
to perfection. It's corruption to a perfect state of corruption. Their corruption is layered by other levels of corruption.
Yes.
It's very good.
Should be an art critic.
I'm a corruption critic.
So Nietzsche.
Nietzsche, your favorite guy.
Yeah.
And he liked Wagner.
Yes, he very much.
You know why?
liked
Because he's German.
Yes.
Right? Isn't
That's basically
Nietzsche
the whole
like,
reason.
Yeah, Nietzsche's like a German nationalist, wasn't he?
Yeah. And a lot of that's this is kind of off topic, but Wagner's, most famous opera was the Nibelungenlied, which was about Norse mythology. And so with, kind of the rise of German nationalism, they really tried to claim a lot of the Norse myths. And of course they had their whole supernatural division trying to track down the Ark of the Covenant and all these other, famous mythological or religious items.
Can you believe that Ark is now in the still in the U.S. government's storage facility? They can't find it, You know what I'm talking about?
What?
The Ark of the Covenant.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Indiana Jones
Oh, well,
found it.
yeah,
They put it
okay.
in that storage facility.
Yeah.
It's been there ever since.
Yeah, that's
Almost unbelievable.
it is almost unbelievable.
Well, that stuff in that storage area.
Yeah. But yeah, Wagner really kind of plays into that whole, Nietzsche's ideal of the, the superhuman and, going back to the powerful and the big.
Right.
With that whole sort of, back to the mythological sort of hero almost.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
That was off topic, but
Well, those the hero stories are a form of art, literature. It has some universality.
So Nietzsche says that the origin of art is to mask life's misery. So we really created art just to distract ourselves from the awful things around us.
There's a certain amount of truth to that.
And he split
like
art.
The blues.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And he split art into two categories back in ancient Greece, with the rise of the creative, really. Mm-hmm. He said that music is the expression of the Dionysiac spirit, which is, sort of the excessive, overabundance of joy and happiness and that sort of thing. And the epic, so, like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, is the expression of the Apolline spirit, which is order and measure, having things, in their due amounts. And so with that, you combine those two, the Dionysiac and the Apolline, to create tragedy. So, the Greek plays, set to music, of course. And that is really the perfect art form, combining, the excessive and the ordered to make this perfect art form.
I think Nietzsche tends to share your negative view of Socrates, though.
I don't have a negative view of Socrates. I really like Socrates.
Really, when he's going around saying he doesn't actually have any original ideas of his own, he just says, well, I know I don't have any ideas, therefore I'm the smartest guy. I thought you didn't like Socrates.
No, I like Socrates.
Oh, okay.
I think Socrates has a lot of good messages.
I thought you had that criticism of him, though.
No, I'm just saying that's what people criticized him for.
Oh, you don't share that view? I thought you did.
Well, I mean, I don't remember what I said now.
Well, do you don't know what you think now?
I don't know what I think now.
All right, we'll think about it later.
And Nietzsche says that Socrates is the antithesis of Greek greatness.
Yeah, for the same reason.
He
was like a negative
everything negative and critical.
Right.
And he valued science more than art. And he really believed that that's what led to kind of the downfall of Greek civilization, switching over the creative to the scientific, as it were. And he also says, very interestingly, he does not have a very high opinion of the modern novel. And he says that novels were begun by Plato, and they subordinated poetry for philosophy. So he would much rather have poetry rather than philosophy, and apparently novels are the vessels of philosophy in the modern era.
I don't get the connection.
I don't either.
Okay, right.
Well, I mean, the origin for the novel, he says, were, Plato's dialogues, and that's what the novel is. But I don't see where he gets, that is the kind of the vessel for philosophy. It's especially interesting that he values poetry more than philosophy, considering that he is a philosopher.
Right.
But Nietzsche's crazy.
Yeah.
Moving on to art and morality, unless you have anything else to add about Nietzsche.
I do not.
So we start off with John Ruskin, I think is what I've written there.
Ruskin?
Ruskin? Is that a K?
R-U-S-K-I-N.
That's a K. I thought it was an H. I cannot read my own handwriting.
Tolstoy.
Yes.
It wasn't either. Tolstoy was a Russian novelist, wasn't
he? Yeah, he was an author. John Ruskin says that art is a very serious endeavor. And, to really create art, we must reveal the fundamental features of the universe, and the artist must be morally good to depict God's perfection, because the goal of art is always to depict God's perfection. Otherwise, we're not really creating art at all.
That's
art should always be
a heavy burden to put on an artist.
Art should always be evangelical, according to Ruskin.
Some of the best art is, though.
That's true.
All the Sistine Chapel and all that, and statues, pretty cool stuff. But I don't know.
I don't think art should be limited to just depicting God, though. I think that's a very hard limit to put on an artist.
Or God's creation, I guess. The ideal of God or something.
He also goes on to say that the worth of a painting is dependent on the value of thoughts behind it. So, it's, he says, you can just paint a beautiful picture, but that's not worth anything, if your thought behind it isn't, to further God's word, essentially.
He would not be a fan of the person who painted the, it wasn't Zool, it was Gozar, the Magnificent? The second Ghostbusters
I've only
movie.
seen the first.
You've never seen the second movie?
I've never seen the second Ghostbusters movie.
It's not as good as the first, but there's a painting that somehow transfixes. What's the guy's name that ends up getting possessed by him? I forget.
I do not know. I have not seen the movie.
A really bad, German type accent, fake accent.
I do not know.
I don't remember either. But anyways, there's a painting in there of this evil dude, and kind of comes to life. And So it was a neat painting, though.
Yes. Well,
but evidently, but it was done for evil purposes.
Yes, so that would not be good art, according to Ruskin.
Yes.
He also has some strange thoughts about architecture. He says that architecture contributes to man's natural mental health, power, and pleasure. So good architecture really has positive influences on you.
I actually agree with that.
Really?
Yes. And in fact, Tucker Carlson, I've mentioned him a couple weeks ago.
I think now the more that I think about it, I think I see where he's coming from now. But continue with what you're saying.
Yeah, gave a speech in Hungary talking about the beautiful architecture in Hungary and Budapest. Although I guess sophisticates call it Budapest. I'm not a sophisticate. And he talked about how they have beautiful architecture. You know, those older stone buildings or whatever they have. And I don't even know what they have in Budapest. But he was really very critical of modern American architecture, being the glass and concrete and steel cubicles. They're just giant cubicles, and how it suppresses the mood, and really good architecture is uplifting and inspirational, and I think there's a lot of truth to that.
So the more I thought about it there in that second, I started thinking about the Soviet architecture, which is the big cement concrete blocks, which is completely dehumanizing. Yeah,
right. And I think a lot of American cities have become like that. I mean, there's a lot of mirrors or glass. And you see some that are a little bit different, but it's made to look sleek, really, rather than beautiful. I would say. Don't you think? Yeah, and
very rigid.
But if you go to even like a lot of the buildings in downtown St. Louis, really beautiful architecture.
Yeah, especially the old brick buildings,
the old brick stone buildings, carved and all that stuff. Well, even like the my law office building, which was built in 1870. Pretty simple brick structure, but it's a kind of a neat design, and it's better than strip malls. Yeah. And then it's like, but it's expensive. It's expensive to build really, really inspirational architecture. But with the federal government and the state government spending so much money anyway, they ought to make it look nice. The courthouses and the government buildings, instead of it just being square brick buildings, they dress them up a little bit.
Well, I know you really like the design of the court house right across from the street from your law office.
Oh, that dump! Yeah. It's the biggest dump in Missouri. Yeah. And the original design was not inspirational either. It's very functional, although I can go along with functional to a certain degree. But they added on to it like 5 different times, and they have different levels, and it's just a dump. And and they keep talking about tearing it down and building a new one, but the voters of our county, to their credit, have the attitude of, we don't care if the lawyers are inconvenienced. We don't want our courthouse to be really nice where everybody wants to go and sue us. But you go south of here, like St. Genevieve Courthouse isn't great, but it's pretty. The St. Francis County Courthouse is really nice, stone structure. A lot of these were made or built in like the 1940s. Government programs and projects and that kind of stuff. That's really pretty. And some of the more modern ones are nicer, but they're again very functional. Yeah. And not very inspirational. But so I tend to agree with that there's something to the positive impact of architecture in entering into a building and moving about a building. Old hotels, they're really, really, really pretty, and it puts you in a mood. Don't you think? Don't you think architecture
I agree.
Put you in a mood? Yeah.
I agree.
All right. So
when I first read that, I was like, "That's kind of weird," but now, I agree with that.
Really, come around his way of thinking. Yes. Ruskin, man of architecture.
Not Russian. Ruskin.
K's
are not H's.
But Tolstoy is a Russian.
Yes, Tolstoy is, and he says that art is only good with moral purpose. And the purpose of art is communication and the sharing of emotions.
I guess it depends on what you mean by good. It seems like they really wanted to have a purpose, and good art, as they defined it, has to have that moral purpose. Even if it looks beautiful, if it was done for bad reasons, I guess it's not good art. Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting. He also agrees, he's a novelist, and he agrees that a lot of his his works would not be art then, because they do not have that good sort of message of spreading, brotherhood, is really what he believes. They should always spread religious beliefs and brotherhood. And he also kind of goes on to say that music cannot do so. It's not that form of communication and cannot spread brotherhood and religious beliefs, which I think is strange that he would think that.
Yeah. I guess he didn't have the benefit of knowing Sly and the Family Stone. Don't Call Me Whitey.
Oh, no. Do not finish the name of that song.
I had a funny story about that. I had brought that record player, old vinyl record player from your grandmother, my mother-in-law. She had it in her basement, and I got it operational, put it in my office at work, and one of her albums that she gave to me with it was Sly and the Family Stone, and I knew a couple songs, from the 60s, and I put on that album, and I'm working in there, and I have it kind of cranked up a little bit, and it's during the day,
yes.
Like I have my door shut, but you can hear it, and then that song comes on, and if you don't know the song, well, you just got to find out.
There's a very aggressive slur repeated multiple times.
Well, it wasn't
used in aggressive.
No,
way,
it was the message is a positive
yes.
message saying, hey, we're all together. Don't call me racial derogatory terms. Either way, and it's kind of like a duet, I guess, with some other guy. I don't know who it is. The singers are a bit in the band, and but anyways. They started saying that. I'm like, oh my God. And, of course, it's not something you can hit the mute button on, because it's an old 60s record player. I'd jump out of my chair and mute it, so to speak, turn the volume down. Yep. So, but it's all brotherhood. It's inspirational. Yes. Bring people together.
I think even without lyrics, really, I really fundamentally disagree with him too. I think that music is one of the only things that can universally bring people together, no matter what. Of course,
it can be.
It can.
Right.
In certain circumstances, of course, I think that you really shouldn't undervalue music in that way.
Yeah. Well, have you ever tried to read any Tolstoy? Mm-mm. It's really hard.
Really?
Yeah. I'm getting the idea that I'm just a lazy reader going through this podcast, because I keep talking. I wanted to read that, but I just didn't. I just couldn't bring myself to it. It's a little big books, fat books.
Moving on to art for art's sake.
Who is this guy?
Benedetto Croce.
No, art. Oh. Why are we doing it for art's sake? Which reminds me of a joke. Oh, I'm not going to say it.
Oh, well, now you have to say it. You can't say it reminds me of a joke.
Well, there's a series of jokes, and they're all horrible.
Oh, I think I know what you're going with this.
Yeah, what do you call a man with no arms and no legs hanging on the wall?
Art.
Yes.
Art.
I can't believe you said that.
So Benedetto...
There's one for Bob. What was the other one? There's like 5 or 6 of them. In the ocean.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So Benedetto Croce believed that the core of art is intuition. And the object is beautiful. So, what we should always be striving for in art is the beautiful. And the beautiful is really a value that should be on par with the true, the useful, and the good. And so, the true is the object of logic. The useful is the object of, I forget exactly what, politics, I think he says, and the good is the object of philosophy. And he really holds, art up to that same level. The beautiful shouldn't be dismissed just because it doesn't have, this necessarily practical purpose. It should still be very much valued in our lives. I guess you have no thoughts about that one.
I didn't really have any thoughts about the next several pages.
Then I'll just run through these pretty quick.
Bam.
Then we have R.G. Collingwood, who said that the true worth of art is the emotion of the artist. The true work of art, is the emotion of the artist.
Which is bull.
Yeah.
Which is complete bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what does the emotion of the artist have anything to do with the art? I mean, it may inspire them, it may help them create it, but the art has to stand beside and alone after the artist is gone, dead and gone. The art is either valuable or it's not valuable, no matter what his emotional state was or his ethical state. All these guys that are trying to define it by the subjective feelings or thoughts of the artist is just bunk.
Yeah. And Wittgenstein completely agrees with you. I'm going to read this short section here. He says, the real absurdity starts when it is said that the artist wants others, in reading, to feel what he felt while writing. I can indeed think that I understand a poem, for example, that is, understand it in the way its author would want it to be understood. But what he may have felt while writing isn't any concern of mine at all.
Darn right. And Wittgenstein.
Yeah, and I agree with that
Yep.
completely.
Mhm.
You know, I shouldn't have to, feel what the author felt or feel what the artist felt to appreciate a work of art. You know, it can mean something different for me than it can mean to somebody completely separate from me.
Right,
And
correct.
I think that's what's kind of lost in a lot of modern art is that a lot of these modern artists are trying to say one particular thing. They have one message in mind, and there's not much room for interpretation beyond what they have to say.
I think you give them too much credit.
I guess that's
I don't
true.
think they have anything. I think they're just trying to make money. That's it. I don't think there's a whole lot of financially successful modern artists.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is interesting here. This last guy, this poet, Arthur Hugh Clow, he says, when he's asked to kind of, explain, about what he wrote,
A blasphemous poem or something.
yes, and he says, interpret it I cannot, I but wrote it. It's your job to interpret it. I wrote it.
Right.
I've done my part.
He expresses himself much like Yoda. Interpret it I cannot, but I but wrote it.
Yes, I guess so. So that was the last guy in that section.
Yeah, interesting discussion of art and beauty and stuff. I tend to agree with their attempt to make it universal or have some sort of universal standards or definitions of it, but it's hard.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's kind of it reminds me of the Supreme Court's original definition of pornography, which was literally, I'm not sure, but I know it when I see it. That's an extra opinion.
I've heard that
and
before.
and that, I think the same kind of temptation we all have with regard to art.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know what great art is, but I know it when I see it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's kind of like the opposite of what we were talking about earlier, which is not what they were saying is the emotional state of the artist, but instead the effect it has on the person that views it or listens to it or whatever. That's really what makes it art. I think is how it's received as opposed to how it's created.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Maybe I'm wrong.
And I know, like with, modern sort of, art teaching, there's all those sort of values that they have, the balance of the picture and, what colors you use. And I think, at some point that's, all well and good when you're judging a painting. But at some point, it's kind of like what I said earlier. There's something almost beyond, I guess, human when you really create beautiful, very, very good art. It's almost something that you can't just put into, yeah, exactly.
Right.
You almost can't define it in terms of, well, this little section here is what makes the whole painting,
I think the best artwork is the one that you can't even really articulate the depth of its beauty.
Yeah.
If you can't really explain it, it's good.
Yeah.
If it's good and it affects you and you just can't put it into words. I don't know why I think that, but that's my view of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Good. We've been agreeing a lot on this episode.
Yes.
All right.
Will that change next episode?
I don't know. If you,
the listeners will have to stay tuned.
The next one is political philosophy.
Yes.
So if you say anything in praise of Marx, we will disagree.
Yes. I don't think that's going to happen.
Horrible. He is my least favorite.
Yes,
he's my least favorite.
Now that I think, we'll get into that next episode. Yes.
Right.
Well, this has been Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.
Still Mark Bishop. I think you will always be Mark Bishop.
No, when I'm dead, I won't be.
I think we've had this exact conversation about this several episodes ago.
Well, or will I still be Mark Bishop?
You'll still be Mark Bishop. Yeah.
Or
your identity doesn't disappear after you. You're like Schopenhauer right now. You're going to go into the universal will. You'll no longer have an identity as Mark Bishop.
Or I'll just be gone.
I guess that's true.
Like putting out a flame.
Yeah, it's depressing.
Stepping on an ant.
Speaking of depressing, let's talk about Marx. You like that segue to the next episode?
Or are you talking about plural me's?
No, I'm not talking about plural use.
Marx.
Yeah, all right. That was fantastic.